All right, so welcome. This is a update to how to make landscapes, particularly for game 240. And the last version I had, I think it was 4.26 or 4.24 or something. So the interface is a little bit different. I have revamped the shader process, so I think that it's going to look a lot better. So to start with, we're just going to start with a base scene, and we're going to create a new scene. So give it 1 second. It may be that we'll have to pause some things on here in order to make it go as fast as possible. I'm going to make a new one. I'm going to make a new scene here. So next, and we'll do it as first person. And that should be 4.27 because that's what we're working in. And this is example scene. Create project. Yeah, 4.27.2. All right, loading up on the wrong screen. Okay, so here's our base scene. So what we really want to make sure about with making a new landscape is we want to make sure that our hierarchy or our folders is nicely organized, so you're not just dumping stuff all over the place. I also like to have the viewport a little bit more like Maya, so I go into editor preferences and I look for mouse, and I change invert middle mouse pan, and I changed that. After you do that, you click on this and set as default. It's set as default before. I don't know why it's not doing it. And then we'll close that. So now if we pan it, it should work the way it works in Maya. Okay. Let's make our thumbnails a little bit smaller. Okay. So I have set up a bunch of textures already. These are textures that I got from Quixel, and they include the PBR textures, and this does not stand for Pabst Blue Ribbon. It's physically based rendering. There we go. So we have albedo, ambient occlusion, displacement, normal, roughness, and specular. You have to make sure to click on specular. It does a little bit, and it's pretty handy to have that. Displacement, we're not going to use that with the landscape because it would increase the tessellation of the landscape way too much. Also, I don't know if you can actually use displacement on the landscape. I'm pretty sure that you can only use it on static meshes. But to start with, Quixel is fantastic. This is not a paid advertisement. It actually is very useful if you need to get some textures. This is Quixel Bridge, which is an application that you can put on your computer, and you can save certain textures onto your computer. If you create your account through Epic Games, you shouldn't have to pay for any of your textures. So if it's asking you to pay and get credits, then you signed in wrong. So you shouldn't have to pay for it. This is Quixel Bridge. Like I said, it's an application. Quixel for an actual for the website is also useful. You can use it through there. You don't have to have the application. Lots of really good stuff here. You should know how to create a fair amount of this. However, the one thing that Quixel has that's pretty hard for people that don't have this tech is creating all the PBR textures. So, all of the height map kind of stuff. It can be unless you have that tech, it's kind of hard to get. So let's get right into this. So to start with, let's put our landscape off to the side. I'm just going to get rid of one side over here. And if we look over here, we see different modes. So we have landscape, foliage, brush editing, mesh paint. We're going to click on the landscape. And this is going to bring up a temporary landscape here. And it's asking you if you want it this big. And you say no, that's a little bit too large. And so we want to change the section size down to something a little bit more manageable. So 7x7 quads, 1x1 section. Let's change this to number of components to 9x9, and 64 resolution is what it will choose. So that's what our little landscape is going to look like for now. So let's, after we do that, we click on Create, and now we have our little landscape. We're going to go back into selection mode. We're going to click on our landscape, and let's just move it out of the way so that we can start in our main area, and then we can jump off into the landscape area. So I'm just making sure that it's just mildly connected there. All right, so we have that set up. Next step is to create our folders. So also remember, when you're saving, don't just click Control S, save current. You want to save all. And that's a thing that some people get incorrectly, and then they're missing a whole bunch of stuff. So we're going to click on Save All. It's going to do its business. And now I'm going to create a folder. And I'm going to call this landscape. And open that up. And I just right-clicked and went to New Folder. Now we have all of our textures. And so we're going to bring in these textures so that you don't have to go searching for them, and save you a little bit of time so that you just focus on one area. So we'll create our landscape material first, and we'll call this m_landscape. And then we're going to create folders for each one of these guys. So I have grass lawn. That's the first one. So create a new folder. Call it grass lawn. No spaces, by the way. And then a new folder. And this is going to be ground forest. I like to use it's called camel case, which is no spaces and just uppercase to delineate the words. Ground forest. And I have two ground forests. The second ground forest is moss. No, first one is moss. The second one is dirt. So let's change this one here to ground forest moss. And then this one is going to be ground forest dirt, and then rock rough. Oops. All right, and within these guys, we're going to, so we have here grass lawn. So I'm just going to go into this guy, and I'm going to grab the opacity, AO, and we'll just bring the displacement in just for the hell of it. And the roughness and the specular, and then I just grab them and I move them on in here. You could do an automated thing. I've found that it doesn't transfer over all of the textures. So I just like to make sure I'm getting exactly what I'm asking for. And I click back into landscape, which is here. So we have grass, lawn, and then landscape, and ground forest dirt is the next one. grab these guys. And those are in there now. Ground forest moss. So, to reiterate what the PBR textures are, is they're the best way to get a very realistic looking environment through all of the extra these extra files. You can see the displacement. We will bring in the displacement here because we'll use it for making rocks. And I think I added a new, I added a new shininess, which should bump it up a little bit. Although you can also do that in Unreal. Okay, so we have all of our landscape textures in there. So now we want to set up just a basic texture for the landscape. So we open up our material editor, and here's the material editor. Here's our shader over there. So first off, we need to create some extra nodes in here. So the first thing that we do is we add a layer blend. And we right click in that in the background, layer blend. That's not what we're looking for. Landscape. We type in landscape layer blend. So I just typed in landscape and I'll bring that up. So there's our landscape layer blend. And then we're going to right click again and we're going to type in landscape coords. So there's layer coordinates. This is all the UVs. And all right, so we're set there. So let's bring in as an example just all the albedos for this. So we have grass lawn, forest dirt, forest moss, rock rough. So we're going to use 4 textures for our landscape. And we'll start with the dirt at the top, and then this one should be the regular grass, and this is the moss, and this is the dirt. So we'll take out of the landscape coordinates, we'll just take a little line out of that, and you just attach it there, grab over here, you attach into UVs, grab over here, etc. Okay. Now we need to set up our layer blend. So we have the layers over here. We just click once, twice, 3, and 4 times. So we have 4 layers. And then you can open up each of these layers. So this one, our first one is going to be dirt. And we're going to keep it at weight blend. Second one is going to be grass. And the next is going to be moss. And the last one is going to be rock. And if you look in here, you can see that now we have our little our names. So the difference between weight blend, alpha blend, and height blend, there's some subtle differences to it that I'm not going to go into, that you can find out on your own. But this is the most flexible and kind of base way of doing it. We'll go into landscape layer coordinates and we'll put in 3.5 for the mapping scale. That should give us the proper tessellation, otherwise it's going to look a little funky. We're going to take our RGB out for the dirt, put it in here, and for the grass we'll put it in grass, and for the moss we'll put it in moss, and rock we'll put it into rock. This is the most simple landscape texture you can come up with. We're going to adjust it so that it looks a little bit more, looks a little better in a bit, and we have that set. All right, let's look at our viewport, and oh, it's not going to show up right because it's a landscape. Apply, save, and let's close that. Okay, so when you have your landscape, if you look in the details, you're going to see landscape material, the slot is open. We grab this guy, drag it on over, and now it turns black. So do not fear, that's what it's supposed to do. There's also a lot of things that need to be rebuilt. Let's make sure that we don't have production set. Okay, that's good. Okay, so now once we have the landscape all set, we need to set up the layers for it. All right, so what I did was I went over to landscape, and it gave you something that looked a little like that. No, it looked like that. And then I clicked on the paint tab. And the paint tab shows that we have these little guys set up. These are the layers that we're going to paint. Before this wonderful kind of painting on landscape thing came about, we had to do some really funky things in order to get landscapes to look the way that we wanted. And now with you know, that Unreal has this landscape painting, it's just so much easier. So the first thing we need to do is we need to click on this little plus sign and weight blended layer, and we click on that, and now what it's creating is how it's going to store all of the painted information. We're going to put this into our landscape folder, so it should be in here. I think that we put it in, hopefully. Yeah. So also make sure that all these names don't have any spaces, otherwise you're not going to be able to save the landscape layer info. So we click on that, and that's set up. Now we have a texture going there. Weight blended layer. Put it over here. Weight blended layer. Put it over here. Weight blended layer. Put it over here. And we're good to go. Okay. So here is our default layer. You can tell that it's a little flat, but we can start painting on this just to show you what it looks like. So let's go up here to change the radius to something a little smaller. And whatever you want to choose to paint with is you just click on the layer. So we'll click on the grass layer, and now it has to contemplate it. And there you are. We have some grass. Doesn't look like much, but we're going to fix that. Let's make it a little smaller. I have some moss, and you can see the moss is changing, and that's being painted. We have some rock, and that's being painted. So I'm not even going into how to change the height of it just yet. We'll get to that in a second. Before we do that, let's make sure that we save all. And everything should be all set up. Hopefully that should look the way that it looks there. And we're going to go into changing our landscape material. So we go to our landscape material, and we're going to update this so that it looks much better. So what we'll need to do is we need to get a, let's see, make materials Make material attributes node. Also, taking notes is vital when you're doing anything like this with Unreal or with Maya, because there's just so much stuff to remember. So we're going to right click in here and we're going to type in make materials attributes. So we bring that up. So we have one there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to plug in these guys, all of our textures into one of these and then end it up into the main node. However, we need to change this main node into something different so that we can do that. So we need to look for use material attributes, and there it is right there under material. So as soon as we click on this, we get this thing here. So this is our output, and this is going to be for our first shader, our first texture. So we're going to divide it up into 4 different sections. I'm going to have this guy down here. Whoa. So there's one, right click, make material attributes. There's our second one. Going to do another one, make material attributes for our third. Make material attributes for our fourth. Okay, and let's disconnect these guys. Now, the way you disconnect these, you can hold down Control and grab on this, and then you can move it to another spot, lift up, and it can go away. Or you can just hold down Alt and click on a line, and it will disconnect it. So that's an easy way of doing that. And let's put this up here. Now we're going to select these guys, and each one of these we're going to comment. So it's very good to have comments. If you're into programming, you know that making comments are pretty darn vital to be able to understand what you're doing. And I'll give you, show you an example of what this shader is going to look like. This is what it's going to look like. So we want to know exactly what's going on here, and we can make comments like this, and it shows us what's going on with each of the materials. So to make a comment, you select the nodes you want to comment, and you press C. And we have our first one. And this is going to be dirt. Select this. And is that moss? I think that's moss. Yeah, that's our grass. So this is moss over here. C and type in moss. Select these guys, press C, and this is grass. Select this over here, C, and this is rock. All right. Now we're going to bring in all the extra PBR textures. Give ourselves a little more room. So first is dirt. Grand Forest dirt. So we have the albedo already. Let's get everything except for the displacement. Grab it and just drag it in. Let's just move these guys over here. And let's go back here. Now we get the moss. Control clicking to add more. And then, oh, we already have the albedo. Drag and drop in there. And go back here. Now we have grass. Expand it a little bit. And we have albedo. Normal spec. And drag in here. And here's rock. go back here, rock rough, AO, normal, roughness. Let's do that shiny test. I think that should be better. And that's this little shiny test that I have that you guys will have. You'll have access to. Basically, it's the specular, but just highlighted a little bit. Okay, so we have all of our textures in here. Now we just need to plug them in. So let's start with dirt. And here's our AO. So let's plug in the albedo into base color. Let's do the AO into ambient occlusion. And I should have told you guys what ambient occlusion is. It's basically makes the crevices a little bit darker, so it kind of makes things pop out a little bit better. And here's our normal map. I'm going to plug that into normal. And this is our roughness. So RGB into roughness. And this is our specular. And so this one goes into specular. All right. Now, let's just go in here and keep plugging this stuff in. So this is our AO. Ambient occlusion. This is our roughness. This is our normal. This is our specular. And our grass. AO. Normal. Roughness. Specular. You also want to make sure that your nodes are inside of the area. That way, if they're inside of the area, you can move them all together. All right, and rock. AO. Oh, we didn't attach our base color. Did we do that for here? Nope, we did not. Base color. We did that for that. Base color. Normal. Roughness. And now I have this extra one. Let's move these guys up so we can have a little extra room. That one's I'm not going to use for now, but I'm just keeping there in case. And this one's called roughness, the shiny test, but it's a replacement for the new specular. So I just pop that in there. All right, so we have those guys set. However, we need to now take a line from landscape coordinates and plug it into all of the UVs of each of these guys. That's already plugged in with the albedo. Where's that there? All right, so we now have all the landscape coordinates plugged in. Now we want to take the output of each one of these guys, which is this little thing right over here. And this is dirt, so we plug that into layer dirt. This is moss, so don't plug it into the lawn one. I'm going to plug this into moss. And this is grass. And this is rock. And then we take the output of that and put it right in here. Okay. All right. So let's apply it. And save it. Now it's compiling the shaders. We have 549. Depending on your computer, is how fast it'll go. It's fairly quick. And we'll close that off. All right, so now if we look at this here, we can see there's a lot more nice detail that we have here. So it's starting to look a lot more real. You might notice that we have this thing going on here. What's that all about? I don't know. Let's find out. Actually, I do know. Let's paint a little bit of rock. You'll notice that it's probably not going to show up. And the reason for this is it's trying to keep everything in memory at the same time. And some of it, it gives up. It doesn't have enough room for it. So you have to change one thing in each of the materials. So let's go back for our landscape. So you go back to landscape, we double click on our material, and now we have to go through each one of these and double click on there. And we click on our material and sampler source from texture asset to shared wrap. So what shared wrap is it puts everything into one big huge texture and it pulls from it. So it's that's the way to keep it all in memory at once. So we go around shared asset, shared wrap. It's handy if you have a lot of assets for your landscape. So this may look complicated, but it really isn't terribly complicated. There's a lot more complicated shaders. This is pretty much like your basic shader, but that will do PBR textures. So if you don't do PBR textures, it's going to look kind of flat. Other textures that you might have, or materials that you might have for landscapes, might do automatic changing of, like, for certain elements of it. There's really no reason for anyone to do that if you know how to actually paint the landscape. But if you really need it done fast, then that can work. But I always want to show you just how you can do everything without any automated, as few automated tools as possible. All right, so we don't need to actually connect that guy up. We apply it, and we save it, and close it, and now we're able to see all of our textures. Huzzah! So let's do a little run through. Sorry about that. That was too loud. And we look here. Now you notice that there is a little bit of a line on the ground. This will probably get fixed once we build the lighting. So some of these look a little bit like that's, oh, we're going from this one to this one. That's a little artificial. But the trick with this is to find out how to mix them together. So this little mixture right over here looks pretty nice. That's kind of the way that we want our landscape to look. We want to use just a little bit of each in order to make a really nice painted landscape. All right, let's build it, build the lighting, and I may have to pause it. We go over here, and don't build everything if you're just doing the lighting. Just click Build Lighting Only. So let's see how that looks. Just thinking about it. Oh, that's not bad. Probably because our scene is so small. Alright, so you saw that thing disappeared. We do have a little bit of tiling, but like I said, if you make your scene well enough and paint it well enough, you won't have any issues with a lot of repetition. There, that's a little bit better to see. Okay, so let's talk about how to make, how to sculpt your landscape. There's a lot of different ways to do this. You want to have some good reference as to how you want your landscape to be sculpted. So have some mountains that you can look at. The references are not a bad thing, because oftentimes when we try to do something without a reference and we haven't had a lot of practice in it, it may look rather strange. So if we look at some of these, you know, it might be hard to get some of this this nice looking stuff really super fast, so you have to work on it. Let's, but you can also import a height map, and I'll show how to do that in another video. In sculpting, you can import your own height map, and this is basically a grayscale image, and you can get it from wherever. There's a lot of different websites out there that'll say like height maps, and it'll have, you know, kind of famous mountains out there, which is pretty neat, which can make it look pretty nice. But you're going to have to change some of the fall off and the settings and smooth things a little bit. So we're going to do this manually to start with. So we start with a little bit of a bigger radius. And we're going to, let's check our strength. So that's coming up pretty hard. So you just basically paint that stuff on there. Now you notice that when I zoom out, things get a little bit more, a little less detailed. So the way to fix that is to change the LOD, level of detail. So we go back into our regular select mode, we click on our landscape, and you'll see max LOD level here. We're going to change that to 0, and now we have it nicely rounded. So we have a little mountain there, or a little hill. Let's go back into landscape. Let's bring up just a little bit more. Now if you want to bring things down, you hold down Shift. So if I want to bring down this top part a little bit, I hold down Shift and it goes down a little bit. I can also smooth things out if it's a little too jagged by clicking on the Sculpt tool and clicking on Smooth, and then that'll smooth that out a little. Make sure your settings are alright. One tool I like to use is Erosion. That is right over here. It gives you some nice little automatic kind of looking erosion. Let's bring the strength down even further. Alright, so we have that over there. We can also make like a little area where it might go into the ground. So say we want to have like a little pond or something like that. We hold down Shift. Let's not do erosion. We'll go to Sculpt, Shift, and then we'll move it into the ground. And with that, we can go into our actors. So for this, we'll go into place actors, and let's go back into select mode. And we want to put in a, no static meshes. We want to put in a brush. So this is a box brush. So we grab that, we drag it in. And the benefit of using a box brush is that we can change the size, and we can also change the UVs for it, so we can tile it a little bit more. So here I just put that little box underneath the ground, and instantly we have a nice little pool. So in order to get a texture for this, there is a nice texture in your basic starter package. Materials, let's look for water. So we don't want the ocean, we want a lake texture. So let's grab this one, click and drag on there. So we have a little lake, but we need to change the tessellation for this. So let's change the scale. Let's put the scale in the surface properties down to 4. That looks better. Let's try 2. That looks even better. Okay, so there's our little lake. Now, if we have that lake texture, we could add some nice painting on the landscape. We're in select mode. Let's go to our landscape and go to our paint. Get rid of our place actors. Let's add like a little bit of rock. Change the radius. And we already have dirt, so let's add some moss. Okay, so it you'll see that periodically. It just means that it's compiling the shaders, and it'll show up as soon as it's done. So I'm doing this pretty fast, but I'm just trying to give you an example of some things that you can do to make this look pretty. Also, foliage will really change everything up. And you'll notice I'm also, if you can hear my mouse, I'm also just clicking just a little bit. I'm not holding it down, because then we're just going to get a solid color. All right, so that's kind of nice in a temporary sort of way. And then we have this area over here. Let's add a little something to this. Let's put some grass, make it a little bit larger. And this is all, this painting thing is all just you, however you want to do it. You don't have to use these particular shaders, obviously. You can use ones that you find. I do suggest, though, that you use the PBR textures. In game 240 environment modeling, I'm going to want to see you using these textures. With VR worlds, you can use any textures that you want. That's all up to you. So I'm just painting all this on here as a base. Trying to get some variation. I'm going to find more moss on the side of the mountains instead of grass. And instead of just having like a solid grass texture, it is nice to have just a tiny bit of something else to give it a little bit of character. And at the top, I'll add a little bit of dirt because if it's up there, chances are some leaves have fallen and have decomposed and added some dirt to it. Like I said, that's a lot of different classes. If you're the best thing to do is just be as observant as possible about your environment, so that you know what kinds of stuff to look for. As Louis Pasteur said, chance favors the prepared mind. So when you prepare yourself by observing, you're more able to recreate something in a little virtual world. So is this our moss? That's our grass. You could add a little bit of moss to this. So where you see some things that are a little bit repeating, you can add another texture to it, which can take away a little bit of the repetition. All right, let's play just a little bit. Sorry again. Probably a little jump scare there. And we can see that's looking pretty neat. Again, the foliage is going to change the look of it, and also any lighting changes that you make are also going to make it look better. So that's the basis of creating landscapes and a nice landscape shader. Oh, there's one other thing I want to bring up, and that is you can make holes in your landscape. So this is pretty easy, and making holes is fantastic. If you want to make like a little underground layer or something like that, you may want to make a hole so that you can fall into it and you can create like a little cave. So to do this, all we have to do is change a little thing to our landscape shader. I think it was in, first person BP. There we are. So let's bring up our landscape shader. Actually, let's save, close that and save all. And then we go into our landscape shader, or material. And we want to add one node, which is called Landscape Visibility Mask. So right click here, Landscape Visibility Mask. Bring that up. Now this gets plugged into each one of these guys. Into, where does it get plugged into? Opacity mask. Up here. Over here. And you don't have to plug this in if you don't have any holes, but it's kind of fun to do that kind of world. Opacity mask. Click apply, save, close. Alright, so say we want to have a hole, so we go back into our modes, we go into landscape, and now with sculpt, we have visibility. We click on that, and we can create a hole. Look at that! Whoa, that's crazy. So now we have a hole, we can fill it, just like when you're sculpting by holding down shift, and that will fill it. Now, it looks a little, looks a little funky there, but you can now go in there and sculpt it, and I'll hold down shift and I can sculpt it so that the edges of that hole go a little bit more into the ground. So that's how you can make a hole in the ground. Super, super easy. And then you can create your geometry inside of there. And if you want to fill it up just like that. And let's bring it back up. we're just going to leave it like that. A lot of different settings on here for, you know, whatever you want to do. Just have fun. Don't go too crazy with game 240, because the main thing is just understanding how to do all of these different elements. And like I said, when you change the lighting on this, it's going to change the feel of it, and we're going to change the sky dome, etc. And adding foliage also creates a lot of difference. Adding rocks and things like that also helps. So don't judge it too much before build the lighting, before you add all of those elements. And you'll get to know the feel of how an environment looks, or it's ready to have foliage. Also, you can create foliage and then change it, and you'll see what happens. And you'll get the impression of what how things should look. And we just built it and got rid of those little seams. There we are. Thank you very much for watching. I hope it was informative.